All right, you should have the paper given out to you by the sub. One thing before we start, please make sure that you are getting and make sure the simulator is finished before we meet on Thursday. You have 3 questions to do on there. So the paper that we're going to look at, I am not going to go through all of this because this is mostly review for you. Only 2 questions that I'm going to go through are questions number 14 and 15. So please pay attention as you go through these because these are some of the questions that you're going to be asked to do this year and next year. So there are some steps here that we haven't taken care of or talked about unless you're in section number 9. So we may want to make sure that we understand what we're doing. So please follow along. On the left-hand side of the board, I'm going to write down kind of the steps to the problem, and then I'm going to show the work underneath the problem. So here we go. So one of the first things that we look for is in the problem like this is parentheses. 9 times out of 10, if you see parentheses, you are going to be working the distributive property. So in section 6, you went through properties. The distributive property has its own video because it's that powerful to know how to work this property. So when we do the distributive property, we are going to be multiplying. We're going to be taking the coefficient, which is the number outside the parentheses. And one of the things to remember is if your coefficient is negative, take it with you. So just like this one is negative here. Make sure that you take the negative in. Now, showing the work is pretty simple. All you're going to simply do is show the arrows that you're going to bring this number into the parentheses and that you're going to multiply. Now, everything on the left-hand side and everything on the right-hand side up until the negative, you're not going to touch. So we're just going to simply bring this part down. And now we're going to take care of the distributing part. So the distributing is going to look like this. You have a negative 4 times x, which gives you negative 4x. You have a negative 4 times a positive 1, which gives you a negative 4. So that's your first step that you want to take care of. Now your second step that you're going to deal with is back in section 4 where we looked at like terms. So when we think of like terms, we're thinking of same letter or no letter. Now at this point we're not moving anything from one side of the equal sign to the other. So in a way you can kind of think of your equal sign as a wall. We're not going to deal with anything on the left-hand side. So everything on the left-hand side can just simply be written down here with your equal sign. On the right-hand side, we are going to identify our like terms. So again, we're looking for which one has the same letter. Well, in this case, I have a 4x and I have a negative 4x. I also have one that has no letters. That is a constant, and those can be combined. This is with adding and subtracting. So when we're looking for this, the only time that we're doing this is when we're adding and subtracting. So we're going to combine the like terms, but if you notice I have a positive 4 and a negative 4 here. So as I go, these are going to reduce to 0, which we're not going to put in, which means we have a positive 56 and a negative 4, which is going to give us a total, because we're going to subtract, of 52. Now, our next step now becomes, I'm just going to move this over here. Our next step now goes back to the 3 questions that you ask equations. So we're going to ask the equation, what's attached to the x? Well, in this case, we have the power and we have the 12. The 2 is our power. The 12 we're subtracting. Well, we said yet last week that if we have a power and we want to get rid of it, we're going to take the root of it. If we're subtracting, the opposite is adding. And if we're taking care of our order of operations with this, that means that our first step is going to be to add. Our second step is to be the root of it. So we're going to do this to both sides. We're going to clean it up. And there's our first step. Our second step is we're going to take the root of it. In this case, it's a square root. Show that these two get rid of each other. And I know what the square root of 4 or 64 is. It's 8, but also we said that we can get the negative of it. So there's your steps for that problem. So let's go to question number 15. Now, I'm not going to write the steps over on the left-hand side because you already have them. But we're going to do the same thing here by, again, recognizing that we have parentheses with a coefficient out front, and we're going to multiply that. So everything over on the left-hand side is just simply going to be brought down. Now, one thing to notice in this problem is you have a power of 3. So we're going to deal with that differently in this problem than we did in the first problem. So when I distribute the 2 here, I end up with 4x plus 28. The negative x on this side is not affected by the distributing. We're just going to bring that in. Now again, we're going to look for like terms. Over on this side, which is the left-hand side of your equal sign, there are no like terms. The 3x is not the same as x cubed. We do, however, have like terms on the right-hand side, and it's the 4x and the negative x. So again, this side we're just going to bring down. We're going to combine our like terms here, and I have 4x and a negative x, which gives me 3x, and I'm going to bring the 28 in. Now, the thing in this problem is we want to get everything away from the x cubed. So we're going to bring the 3x over to the right-hand side. And again, anytime that we do that, we are going to do it by the opposite. So we're going to bring this over by a negative 3 because it's positive, and we're going to combine it with the only one over here that has the same letter. Now, notice that these go to 0. What we want to do on that left side, but it's kind of a nice feature when it happens on the right-hand side. So we're going to bring down everything that we didn't touch in the problem, and now we have the next step. So in our next step, we're going to take and get rid of the 1 because we're going to move it away from the x cubed because that's one of the things that's attached. And again, we're going to show that these go to 0, which gives us x cubed. And we're going to subtract that, and that gives us 27. Now, in this case, what we have to do is we have to take this by the cube root to both sides because that is what this power is. So on this side, we're going to take it by the cube root as well. So this gets rid of it. And the cube root of 27 is 3. Now, in this case, you cannot have a negative answer because if you were to put a negative 3 in and cube it, that would give you a negative 27 on the right-hand side. Doesn't work. So you got to be careful with the types of problems that you're given. Our extra problem is this one here. So let's move this up so we can complete this one. So again, I'm not going to write the steps, but this is what you're going to be working through. So again, recognize that I have parentheses first. I'm going to be doing the distributive property. On the left-hand side, I'm not going to mess with anything in this step because all I'm doing is taking care of the distributive. So I end up with 8x minus, if I take the 2 times 8, that gives me a negative 16. Again, the positive x squared over here is not affected by it, so we're not going to deal with that. We're going to identify the like terms over on the left-hand side, which gives me a 9x minus x, which just gives me 8x plus 9. There is no like terms on the right-hand side. So now again, I'm going to move everything away from the x squared. So the first thing, and it doesn't matter which one you go first, I'm going to take the letter first. I'm going to subtract here by a -8, and I'm going to do that to both sides. Again, lining it up with the like term. So my 8x's actually go to 0 again, which is what I want. So I end up with 9 equals -16 plus x squared. Now, when I get down to here, again, I'm going to move the 16 over, but I'm going to do it by a +16 to both sides. These are the ones that are going to go to 0. I'm left with x squared, and this gives me 25. So again, my last step here is I'm going to take the root of both sides, and it's going to be a square root, which gets rid of that. So I'm going to end up with an answer of, here I can again get 2 answers. So these are the problems that you're going to be asked to do later on this year. Should be already in section 9 anyway. The rest of these you should be able to do because we've reviewed them and we've done them in class. You should have notes on them. So once you're finished with that, if you're not done with the simulator, I would suggest getting into that. Once you're done with the simulator, get under the worksheet. If you're done with the simulator, get straight into the worksheet. Other than that, please make sure you have this assignment due and done the next time we meet, which is Thursday.